Welcome to the Wave Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything news, and we try to find the facts and give you an objective view on it, while also giving our own personal opinions. So, let's get into it. What do you guys want to talk about today?
So the first thing I think we should talk about is some Marvel comics, specifically Spider-Man. There's a lot going on, especially with filming and potentially a deal between Sony and Marvel with this upcoming movie.
So, in 2015, Sony and Marvel had came together to make more Spider-Man movies and a whole new version. And Sony originally has the rights to that character because of history and from Marvel way back in the 80s and the 90s. And way back in 2017, there was an interview with the head producer at Sony, Amy Pascal, and who was the president of Marvel Studios at the time and is now the CCO, Kevin Feige. He's the executive producer on basically on every single movie from Marvel Studios. And Marvel Studios is the entire thing. All the movies are essentially his creative vision, and then he has a team to help him out, and he brings in directors for each movie. And in that interview, everyone knows about it, or most people do, because it's a very famous interview because of Kevin Feige's reaction.
Well, those movies will all take place in the world that we are now creating for Peter Parker. I mean, there'll be adjuncts to it. They may be different locations, but it will still all be in the same world, and they will be connected to each other as well.
So there is a chance that Tom Holland as Spider-Man will pop up somewhere over there? There's always a chance.
There's always a chance.
Where you have Amy Pascal talking about how Venom, that Sony is specifically making Venom and all those characters that they're making for a world for Tom Holland to come back to. And, everyone was like, what the f***? And shit like that. Are we going to keep that in? Oh, yeah, we're sorry. We can just blurt it out. And Kevin Feige has like a really oh shit kind of reaction to it. So that happened, and people were like, oh wow, like what is Sony doing? Like that's pretty interesting that they're building something up specifically for Spider-Man. And then Far From Home came out. It made over $1 billion, and it was Sony's highest grossing movie ever. I think still to this day. And then shortly after, that summer of 2019, Marvel and Sony divorced. And
it was rough. It's a shock.
People were mad.
It legit felt like a divorce, bro. Like it was like couples court, and then like the kids were like, "Mom, Dad, please don't split up."
And honestly, like a person like me, I didn't even know all this like behind the scenes. I was like, Sony and Marvel, like, what is happening? And then I had some friends tell me like, if Sony leaves, Spider-Man leaves Marvel. And I was like, dang, like that is like crazy. Cause I grew up with the original Spider-Man. They kept changing the actor. And, for me, it was like, dang, it's another one of those things. It's going to change the whole dynamic and everything. So I was surprised when that happened.
Right. And then people were mad. And then there was a quote from Tom Holland where he had said like, oh, this is way after the fact. After they had came back together, there was a quote from Tom Holland where he was like, I was initially sad, but they had some pretty interesting things that were going on that Sony was going to do. So he essentially wasn't worried about it too much.
Mm-hmm. I'm super excited. The future for Spider-Man was still very bright with Sony, and we had a really, really wonderful idea of how we could sort of transition into a Spider-Man without the MCU. And Tom Rossman and Amy Pascal were really confident that they were going to do justice and make a film of the caliber that Spider-Man requires. But that said, I'm really glad to be back in the MCU and to have the team back together because I kind of feel like it's where he belongs now.
But, that's kind of true, kind of not true because
Sony's track record for movies isn't...
That and, also he had called Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and Tom Rothman, who's another top dog at the Sony's film division, and called them individually to try to get them back together to figure something out.
Wasn't he drunk?
Yeah. Yeah, he was drunk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He had
and
a
then
bad time.
they came back together, and then there was a quote from Kevin Feige once they got back together. Kevin Feige being the CCO and the president of Marvel Studios, so nothing essentially gets past him at Marvel without his approval. And he had said, Spider-Man has the ability. Spider-Man has a superhero who has the ability to jump between cinematic universes, which got people even more excited. And that brings us to the most recent news from the past couple of weeks, where we have had crazy developments for the MCU and Sony's cinematic universe, where the Hollywood Reporter had said that Jamie Foxx is going to be reprising his role as Electro. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, it's strange because if it is the exact character, it's gonna be weird because I thought he died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 in that whole power plant scene. Like you see him blow up, and there's like just trails of sparks left. And for a lot of people, they didn't really like that character. They said he was pretty cringe, especially with his dialogues, and then that whole itsy bitsy spider thing. You know, the power plant where he's like bouncing around. Like people just couldn't take that seriously. And like there were some things that were good, like kind of fanboy turning into villain. Like that was good. But if they were to bring him back, they would have to like bring him back before he died. Like
Or just they'd have to show like the backstory of how he actually escaped.
yeah.
You
Or
know?
like that power plant explosion or implosion was just so massive, he literally just traveled to another dimension.
Or maybe, I mean, he could be introduced with another villain. Because like you said, I mean, he wasn't like the scariest, the biggest, the baddest like enemy to fight. So it could be, you know, he's now going to be with another villain, you know, and maybe another villain saved him, something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah, and like people are already confused about this, and obviously we won't know until we see Spider-Man 3 or whatever it's going to be called. I don't know the title. People have said it's Spider-Man Homeworlds, Spider-Man Home by 6. Those sound good to me. I could be Spider-Man Home Run, Run Home. But
Home run's pretty good though. Home run.
But people were confused because like he had made an Instagram post to talk about how he's like, yeah, man, I'm back. I'm not gonna be blue this time. And people were like, so like, wait, is this the same one or what? Because bro, people were confused as shit. I was confused. I know that's for damn sure. But it seems like he's reprising his role from Spider-Man 2. Oh yeah. But yeah, it seems like he's getting back his role from Spider-Man 2, from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I should say. And then more crazy news came out slightly after that, again, from one of the Hollywood trades. And if you don't know, the Hollywood trades are like, they have a very unique relationship with, I'm sure you know, they have a unique relationship with studios to where they essentially, they're privy to like a bunch of information, and they kind of become the unofficial mouthpieces for them and will release news just to stay in good faith in them. Some people claim that they do PR work for them, like for like when they have bad stuff happen. I don't know nothing about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But another report came out that Doctor Strange had been added to it, which, I mean, people believe it. I would believe it for sure because it's coming from the Hollywood trades. And Doctor Strange, being the crazy mystic superhero that he is, that always has to deal with magic and stuff like that. And the title of his next movie is called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And WandaVision's coming out later this year. And people already know that it's connected to the Doctor Strange and Multiverse. So what do you guys think about him being added?
Well, I think right now they're really pushing the multiverse format. Like if you look at like all the movies they're really coming out with, it's pretty much multiverse stuff. So that really opens up like a lot of doors for like if they make a TV show, then you know the TV show people, you know, if they're in a different verse, then they could come on. You know, like you said, the Spider-Man and the potential that maybe the villain fell into another universe. So I think right now this is kind of like the go-to, especially after Infinity War, is they have to have something interesting to push to, like something bigger to build up to push fans, because we grew up with the whole Marvel universe and they were building that for years. So to rival Infinity War, they have to do something to draw attention to them, and I think this is the route they're going to go, is multiverses and having villains and heroes jump between different situations. So you could be watching Spider-Man and then a random like Thor, someone could jump into his scenario and help him out. So,
and that's like quite literally what they're gonna do. That's like something Kevin Feige has been like very vocal about, and other directors, that like they want it to feel like a big world, but still any character can pop up. And Spider-Man being Spider-Man and his history in the comics of introducing new characters or not well-known characters, like it makes sense that it helps make sense for comic fans that Doctor Strange is in the movie, and which is fantastic. But then there are more reports, like you said, Pluria, like they absolutely are leaning heavy into multiverse stuff, because the reports from Doctor Strange 2, which we don't have to get into today, but more reports from yesterday had indicated that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, the boys, the OG, the fucking boys are back, yo.
The one who started it all.
True.
The one who was the stepping stone.
True.
And then you got Holland, who is like the prodigal son.
I like that. Yeah, because even Stan Lee was just like, that's the one.
Yeah.
Before God rest his soul.
I didn't see all that news, so I don't really know too much about it. But it's like, are they trying to like insinuate that all three of those are different verses?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be cool, man, because you get to relive the old Spider-Man characters, and you get to be like, wow, like they're coming back. So I mean, even just hearing about it now, like I said, I don't know. I didn't know too much about that. Like that's pretty dope to see them actually go back and and go across the like multiverse. That's something that I know personally I'd be really interested in.
And plus, too, it'd be like redemption for these two actors, because Spider-Man 1 and 2, the original ones, were masterpieces of its time, even now, right?
Yeah.
It's
Spider-Man 2. It holds up so well, dude.
belongs in a museum.
But
Spider-Man 3, though, that was like, it's got some good quality stuff, but you can't really blame Sam Raimi, but it was more of the studio's involvement with it.
yeah, there's been a history of Sony getting too involved in movies and the Spider-Man movies, which again, that can be another topic for another day, because we could literally talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
But some logistical things about that, though, is that Doctor Strange, for those of you wondering, like, damn, this sounds like a lot of characters, because the Sinister Six probably is going to be in that. So, yeah, the Sinister Six can be in that. And if, people are like, oh, I don't know. I mean, there's, from the DVD specials from Far From Home, there's a quote from Amy Pascal where she talks about it.
Villains that we now have in our universe happen to be characters that are in the Sinister Six. There may be something that happens with that.
No matter where he goes, the world is going to be different for him.
Here's the real blockbuster. Brace yourselves, you might want to sit down.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the f?
No more hiding. Yeah, no more hiding.
And she kind of basically says, like, it's not a coincidence that characters that we're using from the Spider-Man movies, the villains, are also in the Sinister Six, and also some of them did have solo projects in development, like Mysterio, and there was a solo Mysterio movie in development and a solo Kraven project in development, but they've basically been axed or like aren't in active development anymore. But the way things are going, with other stuff, like there was a project for Black Cat and Silver Sable that was in development. They got split into two. though the reports were saying that it got split into two, and then now it's still, they're both still in development, and the director for one of them had stated that the show was going to be coming to Disney Plus, and that was, I think that was earlier. I think that was April of this year, and people were like, "Well, huh?" People were like, "Wait a minute, hold up. So you telling me Sony and Marvel divorced a few months ago? Now they all goody, and now Sony's about to license a whole f***ing show to Disney Plus exclusively, even though Sony has its own streaming services? Like, what's going on?"
Makeup, sex, and a nice dinner.
what do you know? I mean, dude, maybe. But like, so that came out, with all this news of, they got this going on, all those solo projects going on, they've been cut. And then there's the Morbius trailer with Michael Keaton in it, who played Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, being in basically the exact same prison outfit that he was seen in at the end of Far From Home, being in the Morbius trailer, which isn't in the MCU. And people are like, huh? What? How does this happen? Like, wait a minute. And people are starting to put the pieces together. And they're like starting to wonder if, like, man, maybe this deal that the Marvel and Sony, when they got back together, maybe this deal is way bigger than we had initially thought. And then also there are other rumors and reports of, like, Tom Holland was supposed to have a cameo and lines in Into the Spider-Verse that got cut. And there's also reports that he was supposed to be in Venom 2 and, like, as probably a post-credit scene, but it was cut short, or, like, it just hasn't been there, or, like, because people were saying, like, oh, he was on set and stuff like that, which I'm not entirely sure of, but I absolutely believe that Sony wants to have him in Venom 2, which I was excited about, because that movie needs Venom. The property is kind of,
it's been cursed.
It's sucky on its own, bro.
Like, how can you mess up someone so cool? Like, if you look at the '90s cartoon,
dude,
don't ever forget about that. Like, that was a masterpiece on its own. Mm-hmm. Like, the whole Venom crossover. They even brought in Doctor Strange for Carnage, Dormammu. Like, it's a whole thing. Iron Man, War Machine,
Fantastic Four,
bro. Shoot.
But they started doing all that stuff. There's all these, like, the reports stopped building up, and people were like, oh wow, like, Sony and Marvel, like, they're doing something. Like, people were speculating, and then it, like, people, like, they weren't entirely too sure about everything. And then, not to mention that, like, Tom Hardy had put up photos of, like, him as Venom versus, like, Spider-Man, and, like, eating him and shit, and, like, they would quickly get deleted. They'd always come back up, but he would do it more than once and stuff. And people were like, what the f*** is going on? And then, people were questioning it, obviously, because they're like, there's no way Kevin Feige's going to let Sony have their characters in here. Mainly because Kevin Feige likes having a tight-knit stuff he develops, which is why, like, a lot of the stuff he made doesn't connect to the old Marvel movies. And also, like, some of the TV stuff that's not under Marvel Studios. So some of the TV stuff coming out after WandaVision, aside from Agent Carter, because that's a special case, because him and the Russo brothers helped produce it. So he was like, yeah, sure, I'll let the guy who plays Jarvis, the original Jarvis, James Darcy, have a cameo and in-game. So that helps